Before I start, I want to make one thing clear. I'm not telling this story for attention. I'm not here to go viral, or to expose the company I used to work for, or to convince you that ghosts are real. I'm telling this because I don't know what else to do with it. My name isn't important. You can call me Isabel. For several years, I worked the night shift in a big call center that handled international accounts. I wasn't an agent. I worked in workstation support, floor IT, graveyard tech, whatever name you want to give it. If someone's computer froze at 3 in the morning, if their headset stopped working, if the soft phone refused to connect, that was my job. The building looked normal from the outside. Glass, steel, lights. Nothing about it would make you think anything was wrong. And if you work in BPO, you already know. Most of the horror stories you hear are just jokes agents tell each other to stay awake. This is not one of those. I held this in for a long time because I didn't want to be that person who blames every weird noise on spirits or every glitch on something supernatural. I'm trained in tech. My first instinct is always to look for a logical cause. But what happened on those night shifts didn't behave like a glitch. It behaved more like something that was learning. And somewhere along the way, it learned my name. It learned my voice. And it didn't stop at the building. I'm sharing this because maybe, just maybe, someone listening has gone through something similar. Maybe you've worked a graveyard shift in an office, a hospital, or another call center, and you've heard things you can't explain. If you haven't, that's fine. Treat this as nothing more than a story. If you have, then you know I'm not exaggerating. This is what happened when I worked night security support in that building, and why I will never, ever work a graveyard shift again. Before anything else, you should know this. This didn't happen in some old hospital, abandoned school, or cursed provincial road. It happened in a perfectly normal office building. Fluorescent lights, glass doors, security guards half asleep at the lobby. And on the higher floors, row after row of cubicles, glowing monitors, and tired agents reading from scripts. I worked in a call center that handled international accounts. The company liked to call it a contact solutions hub. I was never an agent. I was one of the people they called when things broke. My official title was something like workstation support specialist, but everyone just called us floor IT or night techs. When someone's PC froze at 3 in the morning, when a headset stopped working, when a soft phone refused to connect, that was my job. Most nights, it wasn't glamorous, just endless tickets, slow elevators, and walking through half-lit floors while most of the building slept. If you've ever been in a call center after midnight, you know what I mean. In the daytime, it's loud. Agents talking over each other, keyboard tapping, chair wheels squeaking, supervisors going from pod to pod. But past midnight, when only 1 or 2 accounts are live, 90% of the lights shut off automatically, and the whole place feels hollow, like a huge empty lung waiting to inhale. My shift was 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., graveyard. I'd usually start in the network operations room, check the ticketing system, assign priorities. If an agent called the hotline for help, we got the ticket, logged it, and someone would go physically to their station. That someone was usually me. At first, it was just another job. The pay was better than what I used to get, the building had aircon, and there was always free coffee. It took me a few months to realize that not everything in that building was supposed to be there. And it all started with a call that, officially, never happened. The ticket came in at around 2:17 a.m. I remember the time because the room was completely quiet. No new emails, no alerts on the monitoring screens, just the soft hum of the servers behind the glass. Then the internal phone on my desk rang. Our internal line didn't ring often at that hour. Most issues came through the system as tickets, not direct calls. I picked it up. Workstation support, Isabel speaking. There was no response at first, just a soft static, like when someone is there but hasn't said anything yet. Hello, I repeated. This is IT. Line is open. Then I heard it. Not a voice. Breathing. Slow, steady breathing. Not panicked, not sick, just present. Serious, ma'am, if you're having an issue, you can log it through. The line clicked, then went dead. No beep, no goodbye, just silence. I frowned, checked the phone display. It showed an internal extension number, but not one I recognized. The last 3 digits were 519. I alt-tabbed to the internal directory, typed the extension. No match. I tried searching by range, 512 to 520, just in case it was misregistered. Still nothing. Maybe someone misdialed, I muttered. I logged the event anyway, out of habit, and went back to my open tickets. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same line, same display. Extension 519. Workstation support, Isabel. This time, there was no breathing, just the ambient sound of an empty room, a faint hum, a far-off echo, like someone's headset was picking up the aircon. Hello, you've reached IT. Nothing. Please speak so I can assist you, or I'll have to release the line. Still nothing. I listened very carefully. Beneath the hum, I thought I heard something else, a tiny rhythmic series of clicks, like keys being pressed on a keyboard. Not fast, slow, one key at a time. Click, pause, click, pause. The hairs on the back of my arms rose. This isn't funny, I wanted to say, but I didn't. Instead, I said, I'll have to release the call now. The line clicked off before I could. I checked the phone again. Extension 519. No listing. I opened a new ticket, categorized it under Telecom Anomaly, and flagged it low priority for the morning shift to check. Normally, I would have left it at that, but then something else happened. The monitoring screen to my right flickered. For half a second, one of the camera feeds on the 3rd floor, our main operations floor, showed a movement between 2 rows of empty cubicles. Then it went back to normal. As far as the cameras were concerned, no one was there. The call log, if anyone checked it in the morning, would eventually show that no such extension existed. And if I had been smarter, I would have told myself it was just a glitch and moved on. Instead, I got curious. On my break, I went down to the pantry. The graveyard pantry is a different world compared to the day shift. Instead of loud chatter and clattering utensils, you just get the low hiss of instant noodles being stirred, the beep of microwaves, and the occasional tired laugh. I found one of the senior techs there, stirring coffee. We all called him Kuya Ron. He'd been with the company for almost a decade, long enough to work under 3 different BPO owners, 2 rebrands, and several site upgrades. People joked that he came with the building. "Uy, Isabel," he said, nodding as I entered. "Quiet night?" "Mostly," I said. "Just had a weird internal call earlier." I kept my tone light, trying not to sound unsettled. "What kind of weird?" he asked, without looking up from his mug. Extension showed up on my phone, 519, but there's no 519 in the directory. Dead air, just breathing. Then later, clicking. Keyboard, maybe? He froze for half a second. It was small. If I hadn't been watching his hands, I might have missed it. He placed the spoon down very gently. "Third floor?" he asked. I blinked. "The camera that jumped was on the third floor, yeah. How did you—" "Don't answer that extension again," he said quietly. His voice had changed. No more casual tone. "Why?" I asked, forcing a laugh. "Some prank?" He didn't laugh with me. Instead, he said, "You ever notice how some clusters on the third floor are always empty after midnight, even when we're fully staffed?" I thought about it. There were certain rows of cubicles that stayed dark no matter how busy we were. I'd assumed they were decommissioned or reserved for future accounts. "Those aren't supposed to be in rotation," he said. "Officially, they're labeled as inactive pods, old campaign. System doesn't assign anyone there anymore." "But the phones still work?" I asked. He stared into his coffee. "Sometimes," he said. "You're messing with me, Kuya." He gave me a look I still remember. "You log the call?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Telecom anomaly. Morning shift can—" He cut me off. "Remove it." I frowned. "Why?" "If they start investigating, they'll ask for recordings. They'll check the lines. They'll run tests." "Isn't that good?" I asked. "If something's wrong with the system—" "It's not the system," he said. He lowered his voice, even though no one else was in the pantry. "Listen carefully, Isabel. There are a few things you don't do in this building after midnight. You don't go to the 5th floor alone. You don't use the hallway CR near the far fire exit. And if a call comes from an extension that isn't in the directory, you don't engage. You never engage." He tapped his mug with one finger. "Release the call as soon as you realize. Don't talk. Don't wait for it to talk. And whatever you do, don't follow it." "Follow it?" I repeated. "Follow what?" He looked at me like he wanted to say more, then shook his head. "Just don't answer extension 519 again," he said. "If it rings, let it ring." I wanted to argue, to ask for more details, to demand to know if this was some sort of hazing ritual for new night techs. But the way his hands were shaking slightly as he lifted his coffee told me it wasn't a joke. I went back to the knock room. I did not delete the ticket. I just changed the note. Instead of writing "unknown extension," I wrote something else. "Do not respond after midnight." I didn't know it yet, but that was my first rule. And the building wasn't done teaching me the others. A week later, the 5th floor lit up on my monitoring screen. It shouldn't have. The 5th floor was supposed to be for future expansion, bare workstations, no live accounts, no scheduled agents. During orientation, they told us that floor was off limits after hours, unless accompanied by facilities. So when a red dot appeared over the label FLR-5PODC on my status dashboard, I assumed it was a glitch. I clicked the icon. The alert read, "Soft phone error. Station 5C-12, mic input active." Mic input active? On a floor with no agents, no live campaigns, no scheduled maintenance? I checked the time. 2:43 a.m. I tried pinging the station remotely. No response. I checked the asset inventory. Station 5C-12 was listed as decommissioned. I glanced at the camera feeds. The 5th floor didn't have full CCTV coverage yet. Budget reasons, they said. But the main hallway camera was live. I clicked it. The feed showed a dark corridor, emergency lights casting a pale glow over closed glass doors. No movement. I should have logged it for facilities and ignored it until morning. Instead, I picked up my ID, grabbed my flashlight, and swiped my access card for the elevator. The ride up felt longer than usual. When the elevator doors opened on 5, the air felt heavier. like the temperature had dropped a few degrees, but the AC wasn't running. The corridor lights were dimmer than I remembered from the orientation tour months ago. Most of the floor was dark, save for a few emergency exit signs glowing faint green. I stepped out, and the elevator doors closed behind me. For a moment, I regretted my decision. The only sound was the faint buzz of electricity and the distant rumble of the building's generators. I walked past the glass doors labeled Pod A, then Pod B. All the cubicles inside were dark silhouettes. When I reached Pod C, I stopped. The glass doors here were slightly open, just enough for a person to slip through. Inside, the layout was almost identical to the other floors. Rows of workstations, low partitions, monitors facing different directions. But there were no personal items. No photos, no mugs, no sticky notes. Just uniform equipment, like a showroom. Except for one thing. At the far end of the pod, near the corner, one monitor glowed. Station 5C12. The softphone application was open on the screen, just like on any active agent station. And the mic icon was lit. Input active. There was no headset hanging on the monitor, no agent seated in the chair. The chair itself was pushed slightly back, angled like someone had stood up suddenly. I swallowed, felt my throat go dry. "Hello?" I called out, immediately feeling stupid. There was no one here. This floor wasn't in use. It shouldn't even be wired up to the trunk. I approached the station slowly. On the screen, the call timer was running. 0017, 0018, 0019. The field labeled client number was blank. So was account. So was clock. Call origin, dynamic. Extension, 519. My heart skipped a beat. Someone, or something, had placed a call to my internal hotline from this dead station, on this dead floor, through a soft phone that shouldn't even be logged in. I reached forward and moved the mouse slightly. No response. The cursor didn't move. The timer kept ticking. 0031, 0032. The mic icon remained lit. Without thinking, I whispered, "Who are you talking to?" The timer jumped. The digits flickered, then froze at 0033. Then the mic icon switched off. Call ended. I didn't hear a click. I didn't hear a dial tone. The screen simply went back to the login page, as if no session had ever started. I backed away slowly. As I turned to leave, something made me glance over the field of empty cubicles. For a fraction of a second, I thought I saw someone seated 3 rows away, back turned to me, wearing a headset. But when I blinked, the chair was empty. I didn't run. I walked very quickly back to the elevator, eyes fixed straight ahead. When the doors closed, I finally exhaled. Back in the knock room, the alert for station 5C12 was gone. The ticket queue was empty. The log entry I'd written about extension 519 was still there, but someone had added a new line beneath it in the system notes. I recognized the username. It was Kuya Ron. His note was short. "Don't go to floor 5 alone again." That was the second rule. After that night, things got worse. Not all at once. It was small things at first. I'd pass by an active production floor at 3 a.m., and for a split second, one of the agent stations at the far end would flicker. Not the monitor, but the silhouette in the chair. Like someone was sitting there one frame and gone the next. Phones on Do Not Disturb would ring once, then go silent. The caller ID would show internal, unknown. Sometimes, when I walked between rows of cubicles, I'd hear the soft rustle of a headset being adjusted right beside me, only to turn and see an empty chair, the headset untouched. I started moving faster on my rounds, keeping my eyes on the floor, pretending not to notice. Then the calls started using my name. One night, around 3:10, I was on the fourth floor checking a cluster where a few agents were still taking calls. Most wore noise-canceling headsets, eyes glued to their monitors. The ambient sound was a mix of English greetings, foreign accents, and scripted apologies. I was halfway down the aisle when I heard it, a voice, clear and close. "Isabel." I stopped. It had come from my left, an agent's station. The agent there was a young woman, mid-20s. She was in the middle of delivering a billing explanation, eyes focused on her screen. Her lips were moving, but the voice I'd heard saying my name hadn't come from her lips. It had come from her headset. "Isabel," the voice said again. This time, it sounded like it was whispering directly into my ear. My skin went cold. I glanced at the agent's screen. Her call log was normal. She was talking to an overseas customer, account number clearly displayed. Her soft phone showed a standard session in progress, no internal transfers, no conference calls. "Ma'am?" she mouthed silently between phrases, covering the mic with one hand. She'd noticed me staring. I forced a smile, shook my head slightly, and kept walking. As I turned down the next row, I heard my name again. Not from the floor, from my pocket. My company-issued headset, the one plugged into my work phone, wasn't even on my head. It was clipped to my belt. The earpiece was facing away from me. But from that tiny speaker, without warning, I heard a man's voice, calm, flat. "You shouldn't be here, Isabel." I froze. My hand hovered over the earpiece, but didn't touch it. The voice continued, almost conversational. "You went upstairs. You saw it. You followed the call." There was a faint distortion to the words, like an old recording being played back on a bad speaker, but it was clear enough. I slowly reached down, unclipped the headset, and pressed it to my ear. "Who is this?" I whispered. Silence. For a moment, I thought the line had cut. Then, soft and close, "Don't answer when it looks like you." My heart thudded painfully in my chest. "What?" I asked. "What do you mean?" The headset went dead. No beep, no disconnect, just nothing. I yanked the cable out of my phone, trying not to show how shaken I was. When I got back to the knock room, there was no record of an internal call to my device at that time. I checked the audio logs, no playback. I checked the ticketing system, no entry. It was almost like the system itself refused to acknowledge what had happened. I didn't mention it to anyone. But that night, after my shift, I couldn't sleep. The line kept repeating in my head, "Don't answer when it looks like you." I didn't know it then, but that was the third rule. A few nights later, I found Cuyeron in the smoking area. He didn't smoke, but he liked staying there after rounds, leaning on the railing, staring at the distant city lights. The air was colder there than inside. You could hear the low hum of generators, the traffic far below, the occasional dog barking somewhere outside the compound. I joined him, hands in my pockets. "You've been quiet lately," he said without looking at me. "Just tired," I said. He nodded slowly. We stood there in silence for a while. Finally, I said, "Did you ever hear your name through a headset when no one was talking to you?" He stiffened slightly. "That's specific," he said. "I was on 4, I said. Agent's call was normal, but I heard my name, twice. Then later through my own headset." He took a deep breath. "How long have you been here, Isabel?" he asked. 6 months, I said. He nodded, as if that confirmed something. When I was new, he began, I thought this place was just like any other BPO. Stressful, noisy, sometimes depressing, but normal. He flicked an imaginary ash from his non-existent cigarette. Then one night, I stayed late, past my shift. I was on the 5th floor, back when it was still active. We had a banking account up there, high pressure, high volume. People regularly did overtime. He paused. That night, around 3, the floor went quiet, unnaturally quiet. No key presses, no agent chatter, just a single voice. I couldn't place where it was coming from, so I walked between the pods, checking stations. He looked at me then, eyes tired. There was a man seated at a corner desk, wearing a headset, back straight, hands on the keyboard, but his screen was off. The monitor was completely black. My mouth went dry. What did you do? I asked. I asked him if he was okay, he said. He didn't respond. After a while, I realized something was wrong. The lights around him looked dimmer, like the shadows were thicker near his station. He rubbed his temples slowly. I blinked, he said, and he was gone. The chair was empty. He let that sink in. After that, I started collecting rules, he said. Things that help you survive graveyard shifts in this building. He held up a finger. 1. Don't answer internal calls from unregistered extensions, especially after midnight. He raised a second finger. 2. Don't go to unused floors alone, ever. If you must, keep your visit short. Don't stay long enough to notice things. He raised a third. 3. If you hear your name through someone else's call, ignore it. The customer on the other end didn't say it. My heart was pounding now. There are more? I asked quietly. He nodded. 4. If you pass an empty training room and hear a supervisor's voice doing a mock call, keep walking. There's no training scheduled at 3 in the morning. 5. Never look directly into dark glass when you're alone on a floor. The reflection isn't always yours. He hesitated before the 6th. And 6, he said softly, if you ever see yourself sitting at one of the stations in a camera feed, don't go to that floor. Don't try to prove it's just a glitch. Log out. Leave the building. Has that happened? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he said, this building has layers. The daytime people only see one. Night shift sees another. And sometimes when the queue is empty and the hold music stops, something else listens. He pushed off the railing. Take the rules seriously, Isabel, he said, heading back toward the door. They're the only reason some of us are still here. He left me standing there, city lights flickering in the distance. I'd come here for a paycheck. Now it felt like I was clocking in for something else entirely. I tried to follow the rules after that. I ignored mysterious rings. I avoided quiet floors. I kept my head down when walking past glass walls at night. For a while, it worked. The strange calls lessened. The breaths, the faint clicking, the whispered warnings. They didn't stop completely, but they faded into the background. Just another part of the graveyard shift. Then one night, the cameras betrayed me. It was a little past 2 a.m. We had a minor outage in one of the overseas routes, so most of the agents were forced to go on system down mode, informing callers about technical issues, logging callbacks. The building was quieter than usual. I was alone in the knock room, watching the network maps stabilize, when one of the camera feeds flickered. CAM3, BOPS floor. The image glitched, lines of static rolling down. Then it stabilized, but something was off. At first, I couldn't tell what. The view was the same, a wide shot of the 3rd floor operations area. A few agents here and there, Clusters of empty seats, the glow of monitors, nothing unusual. Then I saw it, a figure in the far right corner, sitting at a station I knew was supposed to be disabled. The monitor in front of them was off. They were wearing the headset, back straight, hands on the keyboard. I leaned closer to the screen. The camera resolution wasn't great, and the distance made it hard to see details. The figure was slightly hunched, head tilted down. I checked the station map. That corner was assigned to an old cluster from a previous campaign. All stations in that section were set to inactive. No logins, no live calls. I zoomed the camera in slightly. The figure's shoulders were subtly moving, like they were typing, but the monitor was dark, no light reflecting on their face. Agents nearby didn't seem to notice them. I checked the floor occupancy system. No ID tag registered at that desk. No heartbeat sensor triggered on that chair. I swallowed. Okay, I muttered. Could be a glitch overlay, old recording bleed through. It happens sometimes, or at least that's what we're told. I was about to move on when the figure stopped typing. They straightened, slowly. Then they turned their head, not toward the agents, not toward the floor supervisor's station, toward the camera, toward me. Even with the grainy feed, I could tell one thing. The face was mine. Not just similar, not a vague resemblance. My haircut, my jawline, my eyes. My entire body went cold. The figure stared directly at the camera for a few seconds. Then, without the rest of them moving, the corners of their mouth twisted upward into a slow, unnatural smile. The screen flickered, the feed reset. CAM3, BOPS floor, wide view, no one in the corner. The disabled station sat empty, chair pushed in. I sat there, heart racing, trying to decide whether I'd imagined it. Then the internal phone rang. I didn't want to look, but I did. Extension 519. I stared at it, hand hovering over the receiver. The phone kept ringing. 4 times, 5, 6. I remembered the rules. I did not pick it up. After the 7th ring, it stopped on its own. The line went silent. On my monitor, a notification popped up. New ticket, incident text, user issue, originating from station ID 3B-27, the disabled station in the corner. I opened the ticket. There was no description, no username, just 3 words in the notes field. Are you coming? I should have logged out then, shut down the systems, handed things over to the skeleton morning shift, gone home, and never come back. Instead, I told myself there had to be an explanation. Glitched feed, corrupted ticket, some elaborate prank by another tech. I told myself all of that, and still, I found my hand reaching for my ID. Just one pass through the 3rd floor, I thought. Confirm the station is empty. Clear the error. Maybe find someone who could have sent that ticket as a joke. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. When the doors opened on 3, the floor was in that strange half-state between busy and dead. Some clusters were lit, agents still on calls, supervisors leaning over chairs. Others were dark, chairs pushed in, monitors off. The air smelled like coffee, sweat, and recycled aircon. I walked toward the far side of the floor. As I moved, I noticed something. The sound of agents talking, headsets crackling, keyboards tapping, it all seemed to fade behind me, as if I was walking away from a radio that someone was slowly turning down. By the time I reached the corridor leading to the old cluster, the floor was almost silent. Emergency lights glowed faintly overhead. The disabled section wasn't completely shut off from the rest of the floor. There were no barriers, no separate doors, just a subtle shift in lighting, a slight change in the quality of the air. The row where station 3B27 was located lay ahead, half concealed by shadows. I didn't call out. I kept my steps slow and even, forcing myself not to rush. When I reached the turn, I stopped and peered down the aisle. The chairs were all empty. The monitors were dark. Station 3B27 was just another dead terminal. Cables tucked neatly, headset hanging on the side. No one sat there. I almost laughed in relief. Almost. Then I saw the headset cable. It didn't go to the soft phone dock. It trailed along the floor, disappearing behind the partition. I followed it with my eyes. Slowly, I stepped forward, just enough to see the other side of the partition. Someone was standing there, half behind the cubicle wall, tall, wearing a headset with the cable stretched unnaturally taut, as if connected to nowhere. They stood perfectly still. Their back was turned to me. The headset cord disappeared into the darkness between their shoulder blades. My breath hitched. "Ma'am?" I managed to say out of habit, even though I knew this wasn't an agent. "You're in a restricted area. You're not supposed to." They tilted their head slightly, not enough to show me their face, enough to let me know they'd heard. My fight or flight instinct screamed at me to leave, but my legs refused to move. The air around us felt thick, like every inhale had to push through invisible weight. The stranger's hand lifted slowly, fingers rising to the headset ear cup. They tapped it twice. I heard it. Not through my ears, through my earpiece, the one clipped to my belt. It crackled, even though it wasn't plugged into anything. Then, through that dead plastic, a voice spoke. My own. "Don't answer when it looks like you," it said. The figure behind the partition began to turn. I didn't wait to see the face. I turned and walked away. Not running. Running felt like it would trigger something. I walked. Every step felt like it took 100 years. I didn't look back. When I reached the more active part of the floor, the sounds of calls and key presses flooded back in, like I'd broken the surface of water. Agents glanced at me briefly, then went back to their screens. To them, I was just another night tech on rounds. To me, it felt like I'd just stepped out of a place that wasn't supposed to exist. I went straight back to the NOC room. I didn't check the cameras. I didn't look at any new tickets. I sat down, stared at the wall clock, and waited for the end of my shift. I thought about telling someone, HR, the site director, even just another tech. But what would I say? "Hi, I just saw another version of myself on a disabled station in an inactive section while my unplugged headset repeated a rule I was told by someone who refuses to put anything in writing." Right. At 5:45 a.m., the morning relief tech arrived. She greeted me, logged in, glanced at the overnight logs. "Tahimik Nayona," she said. "Nothing major?" "No, outages," I said. "Any escalations?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "Nothing you can't handle," I said. I logged out of my account. When I stood, I noticed something in the corner of my terminal window, a small icon flashing. I almost ignored it. Then I leaned closer. It was a soft phone notification. Missed call. Origin, extraterrene 519. Timestamp, 0403 a.m. Duration, 001. I hadn't heard anything at 4:03. No ring, no beep, but the log said it had tried. I didn't open the call record. I just cleared the notification, grabbed my bag, and left the room. The sun was already creeping up when I stepped outside the building. The sky was that pale gray blue that makes everything look washed out. I walked to the curb, waited for my ride, trying to convince myself I'd simply been awake too long, that my brain had started filling in gaps with fears. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. No country code, just digits, 519. The message had no text, no media, nothing. Just a timestamp, 0403, the same time as the missed softphone call. I deleted it. I told myself changing jobs would make it stop. I put in my notice a week later. During my exit interview, HR asked the usual questions. Why are you leaving? Was there anything the company could have done differently? Would you recommend us as an employer? I gave neutral answers. Better opportunities, personal reasons. Yes, the pay and benefits were okay. I did not mention the 5th floor. I did not mention the calls. I did not mention the rules. They deactivated my credentials, collected my ID, had me sign some forms. As I left the building for the last time, I passed by the glass frontage, caught my reflection. For a split second, there were two of me, slightly out of sync, like a bad video overlay. I blinked. Only one remained. I went home. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Months passed. I found a different job, still in IT, but in a smaller office, day shift, no graveyard, no endless rows of cubicles lit by half-dead fluorescent tubes. Sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd still imagine I heard the faint ring of an internal phone or the muted click of a soft phone button. But I told myself it was just memory, stress echoing. One night, I woke up to the sound of my personal phone buzzing. I checked the screen. No name, just a string of digits, too short to be a full number, too long to be an error. I answered it on reflex. Hello? For a moment, there was nothing. Then I heard it, breathing, slow, steady. Wrong number, I said, throat tightening. You've got the wrong... A soft click, like someone tapping a headset mic. Then a voice I recognized, my own. You left, it said, but you didn't hang up. The line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long time. Eventually, I put it face down on the table. I didn't block the number. I knew it wouldn't make a difference. These days, I still avoid walking past office buildings late at night. I don't like the way the empty floors look when they're lit from inside. Sometimes, if the angle is just right, it feels like someone is sitting at a desk, watching you from behind the glass. Maybe you're listening to this because you've worked nights before. Maybe you've had a call where no one spoke, but you could feel someone there. Maybe you've heard your name through a headset when the person on the other end swears they never said it. Believe what you want. I'm not here to convince you this is real. I'm just here to tell you what happened. And if you made it all the way to the end, I guess you deserve to know at least one thing. My name is Isabel. I don't work in that building anymore. I don't wear that ID. I don't walk those floors. But something in there learned my name. Something in there learned my voice. And every now and then, when the house goes very, very quiet, I still hear a ringing that doesn't belong to any phone I own. If you've ever had a night shift like that, if you've ever felt watched between the cubicles, or heard your name when no one was near you, tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? I'll be reading every reply, because after everything that's happened, I'm not entirely sure I'm the only one who brought something home.